Hi, welcome back to the second segment of Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
So
at the end of the last segment, we were talking about the first of two tragedies that happened this past week. Actually, let me just briefly mention the second one.
Right.
The second one was a gentleman named Anthony Clay, age 49. Father with two children, was murdered on Harvard Street.
And not random? Is that the
Apparently,
gist?
I think the police are saying not random. So it was on Harvard Street, right where the Harvard Street side of Green Rose Park, the relatively new park. I mean, the police are asking for information. This was not apparently not a random act, and it was a horrible tragedy in a neighborhood that has seen more than its share of murders.
Willow Street, there was a...
Willow Street, this is only a half a block from, why am I spacing out? Windsor Street. And that there have actually been other murders, several other murders over the past year or two on this very street. So how many memorials do we need to have wrapped around trees and at the curbs in this particular neighborhood? It was an interesting juxtaposition because one woman is tragically killed in a bicycling accident in Inman Square. Another person is murdered in an area where there are multiple murders. There's clearly, these are both severe problems, but there were dozens and dozens of people irate about the cycling accident. I don't know that any single person came out talking about the murder.
Well, I think the idea of people with guns and people just don't associate that with Cambridge. I mean, even I am in denial about the gun buyback that turned up 55 guns. And what? But if you don't live with that, it's not your reality.
I hate to believe that people have become acclimated to the fact that we should expect a murder every once in a while.
Oh no, it's not even that. I think that it's just so out of the... There's nowhere to put it in your brain because, you don't want to think of your city that way.
So I'm hoping the police department can find a good resolution and bring some justice to this one here.
I hope they find who did it.
So that was a real horrible thing, and it was the night of the dance party. I don't think it was related to the dance party.
Well, it was early in the morning, wasn't it?
Well, it was Friday. It was like 12 something, I think. But it was the dance party. It was happening. I was a little worried because the big crowds come in there, and
nowhere near that though. It was the other part of Harvard Street.
But there are people from all over are drawn. So I was a little worried. I went home early because I was worried there might be some people from elsewhere.
I went back home at 20 to 10. It gets too crowded and too young.
It was very crowded. It was fun, actually. I was there for a little while up around 8:30, but I didn't want to be... I wanted
to be there early.
Intuitively, I just didn't want to be there late, and I was a little worried.
Dark.
So then I heard there's a murder. I don't think it's related. But I almost felt like I had this intuitive feeling it was just going to be one of those nights. But then, the day before was the cyclist being killed in Inman Square. Now, as we were mentioning at the end of the last half hour, the day before that death in Inman Square, there had been a meeting was it at the hospital? Or,
I forget, but it wasn't at City.
Yeah, but it was up in the vicinity of Inman Square, where the transportation planners actually laid out some possible ways of reconfiguring Inman Square.
That is so ironic that it was that particular square.
To have the juxtaposition within a half a day.
I know.
It's unbelievable. But that's what happened. So I was going to just show here some of these configurations. So let's set the stage. The idea is right now you have this sort of a kind of a elongated X of Hampshire Street.
Well, just show it. They'll see
Hampshire
it.
to Beaker. Beacon here, so popping up right here. Okay, so there's the big X. So you have the little side streets like Antrim Street and Inman Street, and to the north, Springfield Street. But what you have is this sort of, it's not a 90-degree intersection like a really easy, predictable intersection. It's one of these long X's. Now, there used to be a lot of other ones like this, big forks like Trapello Road and Belmont split in a very awkward
right.
way. Brattle and Mount Auburn used to do. And they reconfigured many of these intersections to make them safer. Maybe they were a little slower, but that's all right. They're just incomparably safer. Right, so Inman Square has been a problem. If you actually look at the distance between where you see the crosswalk from Springfield heading over toward Inman, and then the crosswalks up at the Antrim Street end.
It's crazy.
Right, it's a long distance, a very long distance. So imagine what it's like if you're a cyclist, for example, just to be very, very particular here, who's riding, let's say, westbound on Cambridge Street. You cross Springfield, you basically feel like you're entering the intersection at Springfield, but your ultimate destination is to continue
on
up
Cambridge
toward
Street.
Harvard on Cambridge Street. If you look at the distance that you actually have to go, while it may well be that there is crisscross trafficking still taking place on Hampshire Street, or we like to think of it as the Beacon Street end up there to the northwest, it's a little intimidating. So cyclists sometimes will sort of snake along the edge. The Indian food place, basically follow the crosswalks, become sort of a...
You're talking about right around here.
Yeah, become kind of a quasi-pedestrian, maybe jump through the island, go to the edge of the park, and then come out of the crosswalk, and then continue on the street because of the geometry of the street. It's a miserable intersection.
So you're not coming straight where maybe a driver would see you.
You might not, because you feel like you're out in the middle of no man's land when you do so. So what you do is you snake your way along the edge.
Is there a bike lane dedicated there? No, there isn't.
No striping at all other than those crosswalks that you can see in this
No, not on the
overhead.
crosswalks. I'm talking about on Cambridge Street. No?
In fact, even where Amanda Phillips was killed, there's no bike lanes marked at all.
But there is on this street, on Hampshire?
Eventually, but not right there.
Isn't there one right there? I can see it.
I think as you're approaching it, coming up to before Inman Street, but then it disappears. Right?
All right.
Now, similarly, if you were coming down Hampshire Street from the north, from Beacon Street in Somerville into Hampshire, and you wanted to continue Hampshire because you're going into Kendall Square, you have this...
do all this stuff.
You have this several hundred feet of intersection that you have to navigate while there is continuing to be traffic spilling out of Springfield Street or wherever, and
you're dealing with lots of cars coming at you,
and it's kind of chaotic. And even Richie Rossi, he was giving a presentation a month or so ago at the Mid-Cambridge Neighborhood Association. He highlighted Inman Square as just an insane problem that needs to be solved.
Well, I guess they definitely are on it now.
So anyway, let's scroll down a little bit here. So Joe Barr from the Traffic and Parking, together with the consultants who worked on this, came up with several alternatives what could be done. All right. Now this may take a little bit of explanation here, but basically the idea, it says right on the slide here, it says the idea is to bend Hampshire Street. So in other words, instead of going straight through on Hampshire, what you would do is if you were coming, let's say, from Kendall Square area, you'd come up by vicinity of Inman, and they would actually extend the plaza out a little bit so that you would then, by the front of the fire station, so you would bend straight towards Springfield, right around the bend,
that
come
makes
to
more
a traffic
sense.
light, and then when the traffic light is clear, you could then make a left turn to continue
Street.
to Cambridge and on into Hampshire
I like
to where
that.
you were going to go.
That looks good.
And similarly, if you were coming down from Hampshire Street from Somerville.
So basically you're coming to a real dedicated four-way type stop.
Exactly right. You would come to a 90-degree.
So that's interesting that this has...
Right.
Wow.
So actually, let's actually
you want
scroll
more?
down a little bit
I'll do
more.
that.
And I think what it'll actually show here is a little bit more detail, right, in a few of these slides. So the blue in this slide here is showing basically in front of where there's like a convenience store and an Indian food place.
Rosie's Bakery, is that right?
Close to Rosie's. Rosie's a little further up there. Actually, is Rosie's still in operation?
Yeah, it is.
It is. So, and then extend that out, create this big plaza, and sort of bend Hampshire Street, literally bend Hampshire Street.
So they're saying take over some of the street and make it a public space?
Yes. So would you, instead of having Inman Square, I mean, the easiest way to understand these pictures is say instead of having one intersection, one principal intersection,
you'd have
split it into
basic two major ones here.
Exactly.
That
right?
It's great. I wonder how long that would take.
I think, honestly, you're
They should
building out
start
a
on it
plaza.
now, yeah.
This wouldn't take long to implement
Yeah.
at all. It would be an easy thing
Right.
to implement.
I mean, you have to deal with the businesses that might be inconvenienced, but you know what?
Yeah, I think if we
Yeah.
scroll down a little bit more,
What
there's
else do we
even a
have?
little bit more detail on this. So it just basically
Oh, here you have
suggests
the
here,
lights.
again, just to emphasize that you would then put down a traffic
Construct
light.
2 new traffic signals, yeah.
Put in traffic signals
Yeah.
here and whatever. Now, there are some potential problems with a design like this. For example,
Yeah,
if you're coming down on Hampshire Street from Somerville,
yeah,
and you come to that traffic light,
Yeah.
then you're looking straight ahead at Antrim Street.
yeah.
Whereas previously you might have thought, well, we continue on Hampshire, maybe we take a right at Inman, or maybe we go further down. Now you're getting pointed directly at Antrim Street. So if
Yeah,
I'm
but-
no, I mean, but
Well-
it's natural.
Oh, you're talking about a car or a bicyclist?
A car. Or a cyclist.
Yeah.
But if you're a resident of Antrim Street, you might look at that and say, oh, now everybody's going to be directed down Antrim Street.
I get you.
Okay, so this is not without some
True.
questions that need to be addressed.
Right, you're going to hear from them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Similarly, Hampshire Street now seems to be having a preferred alignment onto Springfield Street. Now, I think
Well,
anybody will learn quickly that
yeah.
unless you want to go into the depths
You know
of
what? I
Somerville,
think
you don't go that
signage
way.
can take care of that.
You
this
definitely
is
have to do that.
not a throughway or whatever. You can say
listen,
this is not the. There's
Union
ways to do
Square,
that.
Somerville is as complicated as
Oh,
this,
gosh,
and people
yeah.
have kind of figured
Yeah.
it out. So people will figure it
I
out.
think that they can do that
Yeah.
so that people aren't using the
Yeah,
side streets.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to
Okay.
bop away,
All
away
right.
around for now.
That
But
was
actually,
really
if you
good.
scroll down a little bit more,
Yeah.
that's just one of 2 alternatives. The other alternative basically is exactly the same idea, but instead of bending Hampshire Street and leaving Cambridge Street straight,
Yeah.
I think when you get further down.
Oh, you don't want this one?
Oh no, you go further down. It's like into, well, just keep on scrolling down. you'll see.
Beyond this?
Yeah.
All right.
There's one, it says now the idea is bend Cambridge Street. Okay, actually, we'll do this and
all
then we'll
right.
scroll ahead of here. All
It
right,
kind of looks the
scroll.
same to me, but.
Okay, so this is exactly what we saw before.
Right.
This is as it is today. Now, if you scroll down
Okay.
a little bit, you'll see here. So the other alternative that was proposed, and there may be some very bright ideas as well, is what you would then do. This one seems to me a little bit more complicated, but what you do is you keep Hampshire Street straight,
Oh, and then
and you
Cambridge
create
Street.
the 2 intersections along Hampshire Street.
I don't like that.
I think this one's a little harder to
Cambridge
make
Street,
work.
I think, is more used to being a more major street. And I
Right.
think it'd be harder to, I don't know, psychologically, I
I
don't know.
think that might be right, but I
Yeah.
think that to be perfectly fair,
Yeah.
you have to put these, or if there's some other bright ideas, you got to put them both
Oh, sure.
or all on the table,
Yeah.
and then really, really exhaustively think about all the pros and cons of each.
What about that little curve coming from Antrim into Cambridge Street right there?
Well, that basically becomes where Cambridge Street meets Hampshire.
I understand, but I'm just
taken
saying in
away.
terms of,
Oh, in other words, you wouldn't
cyclists,
wouldn't.
yeah.
Well, I guess if you do it that way,
You'd
then
have to watch cars coming in from Antrim as well as Cambridge.
you may create a real conflict
Yeah.
of traffic who wants to go down Antrim Street, who's coming from Hampshire.
Yeah, I don't like this one, but.
You're
yeah.
running into the traffic
Yeah,
on Cambridge.
I like the other one.
I think the first one appeals right away,
Yeah.
but
Is there anything beyond this?
just the same kind of enhancements that
So
further
so
down.
they do public
Yeah.
parks?
So
Oh,
again,
2
just
public parks
So to
now.
do this, you would do well. Actually, both of them would have.
Well, the other one only had one big.
Well, they only
blue.
showed it
Oh, okay.
very loud and clear in one, but it was actually
All
in
right.
both. So this one would have a big sort of plaza smooshed out over where Cambridge Street is today, and another one over there at the corner.
But
by the
I mean, I
convenience
guess
store.
it's just a calming area because people don't really use them. I mean, do they use Felucci Park? I don't know. That's this right
Well, I mean,
here, right?
people would do creative things with them. You would
I
plant
guess.
them, you'd do whatever,
Yeah.
right? Becomes a little performance area. Hard
But
to
it's
say.
more to actually calm the area and
Yeah.
to make it more. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I mean, Union Square, Somerville used to just be this confluence of roads, and now they created a place where there's a little parking area
Still,
and a place
it's
where they
not-
do the farmers market,
Yeah.
right? And,
guess.
And when they
Still-
do the Fluff
yeah.
Fest,
I don't
celebrating
do it too much, but-
marshmallow fluff.
All right.
All right. I love it, Union Square.
Oh, I'm sorry. We're still.
Yeah. So anyway, this is just to sort of show here. So this way, just the last slide we'll show on this
Is there one beyond this?
this will be enough, but it again just sort of shows where you would put signalized intersections, separate signalized intersections.
Yeah, signalized. Ooh.
Yeah, I mean you could probably do away with some of the other signals, like at Inman Street and whatever, in favor of just these. Then So anyway, I think it's about time somebody, maybe long past time, to actually come back with some good creative ideas for how to rethink this last of the sort of wild west intersections.
When you have intersections that aren't just straightforward.
Yeah. Now it's going to be a little tougher to solve, but I can give you one other intersection in Cambridge that needs a real treatment, but it is actually it's right now being subject to a similar study, but it's a state road. And that's where Fresh Pond Parkway crosses Auburn Street.
Oh, yes.
And that's
that's awful.
That's absolutely horrible. And then you the state wants to maintain a certain amount of throughput.
I don't even like being in a car in there.
I don't like being in a car there.
Bicycles, forget it. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's when I was actually at an event down at Gary's Landing. The Cambridge Boat Club on Saturday. No,
what kind of event would you be at the Cambridge Boat Club? Come on.
One of my coworkers, son and daughter.
Oh, so it was
having their bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah.
Oh, wow. You went there. Okay,
I went there, yeah. And I parked just because it was at Gary's Landing.
Yeah.
Because I'm sort of this history buff.
Yeah.
So I insisted on parking in front of Governor Gary's house. Which is Elmwood, which is where the Harvard president lives. So I parked right across the street.
Oh, okay.
So I had to walk from there right through that intersection to get over to Gary's Landing, and and it's hostile. I mean, there are certain roads like along sections of McGrath Highway. Oh. There's another one I'll give you.
And also, I think they're fixing the one on near the Harvard new development. What is that? Cambridge Street in the Western Ave that goes into, you know what I mean. They're doing all that development where the railroad is. Why am I blocking on it?
All right. Whatever. There are a few.
That one's bad. But they're redoing it.
We still have a few bad intersections. Yeah. But when you walk through some of these places on foot, you feel like you're running along an interstate. It's hostile. There's car parts scattered that have come off of vehicles. There's dead animals.
No, I haven't seen that.
This is not like a friendly neighborhood street. Right. Actually, let me digress.
Okay.
As if I never digress. Right. Speaking of neighborhood street, so there was a reintroduction at this latest council meeting of an order to push the idea of a home rule petition to allow Cambridge to set its own speed limits. Right.
Which is in consort with Boston, because
Boston is doing this as well. And I'm becoming, with every passing week, more and more convinced that this is completely the wrong way to look at this.
What, to do a home rule petition?
Right, because the problem is not that Boston singularly needs to have this right, or that Cambridge singularly needs to have this right. I think what really needs is the entire state needs to have a refinement of how you define roads. So that you have, as of right, the capacity to set speed limits based on the type of roads. So right now, the state law is ancient. It basically, the only phrase they really make reference to is thickly settled. And everybody I got my driver's license here in Massachusetts, so you had to learn what a thickly settled area was. Now, thickly settled is a term I think that probably dates to the 19th century, right?
So who's working on this on the state level? Somebody must.
I don't know that anybody is.
Isn't there a transportation subcommittee?
I think there should be, and this is what I would hope would happen is that. So if there's any state legislators out there, please. Take the Boston Home Rule petition, take the Cambridge Home Rule petition, push them together,
and make a new
and
bill.
Change the Massachusetts general laws to define something like a, quote, neighborhood street to mean a street where, just by its very nature, should be a 20 to 25 mile per hour speed limit. So I like to say, if you take a street like near my house, Fayette Street, where it's one travel lane and parked cars on both sides, a lot of friction there.
Yeah.
The notion that you could ride down there happily and have pedestrians in front of you or bicyclists on the sharing the road, and while you're whipping down there at 30 miles an hour is just not right.
So but you can post signs. But
no, you can post them and they have no meaning at all.
Well, to who?
To anybody. They're not legally enforceable.
But if somebody saw a 15 mile per hour on that street, they'd probably obey it.
They might, and that was an order from Dennis Carlone from earlier
that
this
leaves
year.
it up to the city to have to put a lot of signs in.
The way it works right now is if you become absolutely convinced that there's a particular road that should warrant something like a 20 or 25 mile an hour speed limit, you have to do a big study. You have to prove it and deliver this, and then make the case. And as long as you then make the case to the state, then you get granted the authority to do this.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that all of our streets are 30? I thought they were 20.
Nope. It's 30. There are a few streets like
really fast.
Brattle Street.
Yeah. Because I have seen 20, 25. I've seen 15.
So there school zones are 15.
Oh, okay.
All right. So there are certain places where you do have that right, like in front of a hospital or in front of a school or whatever.
And is that a state thing?
Yes, and the state allows that. So I think what you need to do is have the state legislature. So Marjorie Decker, this is your moment in the sun.
Livingston?
Or Jay Livingstone or Sal Di Domenico or all you guys.
It does help if the citizens ask them to do this too.
Right.
You can't just expect them to
So they need to do this. Now here, I mean, there's a reason why, and it's actually something I'm thinking about because I have to moderate a candidate forum later in July, actually 2.
Is this for whose seats?
I got to do Toomey Connolly and I got to do Jalen Chung again, but this will be for CCTV.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I was thinking about things that I would ask a person in the state legislature, and one of the things I thought had to do with local control.
Yeah.
What things should municipalities have control over, and what things should the state retain control over? Or
what about take over, like plastic bag bans?
For example. Right.
Seriously.
For example, right. Yeah. But, if, I personally think that there should be the same minimum voting age for across the state. So
is there?
There is, 18.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So if Cambridge sent in a home rule petition saying we would like 16-year-olds to vote in municipal elections, I think the state should say, no, there has to be uniform standard across the states. And I agree with that. Even things on the minimum wage, I would agree maybe you could do a regional things, but you shouldn't have to say...
Right, some things we really,
minimum wage in Cambridge is this, but the minimum wage in this is that.
Yeah.
You create these weird
especially if you're dealing with a chain
disputes.
that, has stores.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So some things should be regulated that way.
Yeah.
I would worry if you just gave every city and town carte blanche to set their speed limits, that they would become cruel. They would say, well, we've decided that our lovely little town should have speed limits no more than 10 miles an hour. Or people would put in speed traps of 15-mile-an-hour limits right off the exit from the Mass Pike so they can nail you. And so there are good reasons why you don't want to give cities the absolute right to do this. But if you have particular types of streets, like arterial roads are different than what you might think of as neighborhood streets, and even what you might call neighborhood streets, there may be distinctions that maybe this should be 25 mile per hour, this might be a 20 mile per hour road. Give the cities the direction to say if your street is configured in a particular way, you have a right. You don't have to give us a traffic study, nothing. You just put up the sign and that's it. Right, but you can't go on Mass Ave, in a place where it really is a 30 mile per hour place, and just say we've decided to make it 15. Yeah, that wouldn't be right. No. So there's a right way and a wrong way to do this.
But it seems like in conjunction with the cycling stuff, and it is a good time to say, let's look at...
I really think that the state...
And the state should look at, because it's, we're not the only community that has bicycles.
Right, so if there's more cyclists out on the road, And more pedestrians, because people are moving
Right.
back to the cities.
Right.
This is not the suburbs where you live in your little
Not
subdivision.
make fun of people. Come on, they
Right.
don't live in they live in mansions. Some of them, but
Some
anyway.
of them live in McMansions, sure,
No,
sure. But the
nothing
thing
against
is that I think the state legislators need to relook at how things are set out.
Yep.
And cities and towns need to sort of rethink this as well. And so now's the perfect time to do it, and I just hope they do that.
All right.
So let's see.
We don't do that. We can.
we
That's
solved-
happening Thursday, right? Another Envision Thursday.
Yeah,
And then
so-
also
so we're
the
having-
search process. For
Yeah,
this
so there are a few sort of quick announcements. I'm on the Envision Cambridge Advisory
Right.
Committee. We have a meeting tomorrow night, which is...
Oh, that's your own meeting, because I
Yeah.
know there's one at the library.
Yeah, so
on
I think it's
Thursday.
6 to 8 up at the 4th floor of Community Development.
Okay.
Up in, 344 Broadway.
Okay.
Sort of general meeting. There's also a panel discussion put together by the people associated with Envision Cambridge, the consultants. That's at the main library
Oh, so
on
that's a panel
Thursday
discussion.
night.
It's not a
meeting.
round table type thing.
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
All right.
There are other subcommittees of the Envision Cambridge process that are having other meetings, like the
Right.
Alewife group and the Outreach group. I didn't write down the
So
dates.
just go to
but-
Envision Cambridge
yeah,
and find it
but
out.
you definitely want to sort of find
Yeah.
out about that. The city manager process continues. The search process, and there is a meeting of the Government Operations Committee meeting
Tomorrow night?
coming up Wednesday, June 29th at 5 p.m. at City Hall, where the results of, basically you get to sort of, I think, maybe get a chance to see what the ad's going to look like when it gets put out.
Okay,
for-
and also
on
I
paper.
read on the CCTV, which is right now where we are, they're going to have video. Do you
Isn't
know
that a
about
great thing? Yeah, so-
tell me about that.
So, in short, it's a brilliant idea, actually.
Yeah,
I think Susan
great.
Fleischman
Yes.
sent it my way, and basically they want to put together, they're inviting everybody, so you,
Right. Do you know when that is? Or if you just,
it'll be coming up, I have it up on ourwinters.com.
just go to cctv.org, you'll
CCTV,
see something
and the basic
about
idea
it's
is
like
we want everybody to make a relatively short little video letter to the next city manager, whoever it ends up being,
It can be a
saying,
minute, can be.
now that you've come on as city
Yeah.
manager, maybe in the end of September, here's some things we want to tell you.
Oh, so it's to the
the next-
selected one, or is
I
this
think
to the?
it's-
I
I think
thought it
it's-
was more. What do you want them to do?
I'm not sure. I think it's really, now that you're coming here, but we'll see.
All right. Either way,
Anyway,
look at
we're
right.
pretty much out of time on this
Yeah.
one here. So, but
Definitely a
anyway,
great idea.
That's coming up. So
Do
anyway,
we have a show next week? It's
I
not
think
July 4th.
so. So
it's
anyway,
July 5th.
we'll see you
All right.
soon on Cambridge Inside Out.
Bye.